This is the Happy Rant Sports podcast, in which Ted Kluck and Barnabas Piper rant about old sports, new sports, sports books, sports movies, and anything else related to sports that they feel like. Enjoy.
Hey, welcome to the Happy Rant Sports Podcast. I am Ted Kluck, joined as always in studio by my good friend and partner in sports radio, Barnabas Piper. And Pipe, we have a very special guest in the studio today. What I've done, because I'm committed to this program and I'm committed to great sports radio, I have flown in a member of our fantasy football league. So whenever I do a trade with someone in a fantasy league, I like to fly that person in just to kind of debrief it and talk about it and talk about our feelings and
kick the tires
on it a little bit. So I have in studio a boy named Sue from our fantasy league with whom I did a trade that we'll talk about in a minute. So this is the great Kyle McClellan. For those listeners who are Taylor football fans from the late 80s and early 90s, they'll know the household name that is Kyle McClellan, legendary defensive lineman at Taylor University, current pastor of a church in Nebraska. Kyle, welcome to the program. Say hello to Barnabas Piper.
Thank you, Barnabas. Good to. I don't. Are we meeting? Does this constitute a meeting?
I think this constitutes a meeting. Definitely.
This is how I met Ted for like a year and a half before I met Ted. So yeah, we'll call this a meeting.
Absolutely.
It works. And so here's Barnabas. Here's my fanboy moment. Our family, because I am a pastor, actually read your book over the dining room table for the course of about 3 months and worked through it, and it was very helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, Kyle has...
That's the best pitch I've ever gotten for a book on this podcast, so thank you.
Dude, seriously, the book is called The Pastor's Kid. It's great.
It's a fantastic book.
Because Kyle is a pastor and a great pastor. He has messed up 2 children, one of whom is a freshman and a journalism major at Union University. So I feel like
So now you get to mess up that child.
I get to further mess up the child. So, like, this poor girl goes from, like, living with one crazy meathead weightlifter in Kyle McClellan, and then she gets to study under one for 4 years. So.
She knows way more fart jokes than any 18-year-old young woman should know.
Yeah. She's actually way too cool and socially like adept to really to be a journalism major. But that's another topic for another time. We'll definitely get into that. But Piper, as a member of our fantasy league, and I want to kind of open this up with some fantasy talk, and then get into some Minnesota sports stuff because you went through another hard night.
They seem to be coming hot and heavy these days.
Dude, they really are. There's some hard days and hard nights for the Minnesota sports fan. But I want you to, as a member of our league and probably as the most experienced and senior like fantasy football player on the program this morning, I want you to break down the trade that took place between Slippery When Alouette, that's my outfit, my program, and a boy named Sue.
All right, so can you list off the players for the listeners? Because if I try to do it, I'll probably curse.
Dude, so here's what happened, man. So I've got Julio Jones and Lamar Jackson in my building now. So they're in the Alouette building. They're learning the offense. And I shipped out Baker Mayfield. So I sent Baker Mayfield to a boy named Sue. I got Julio Jones, very elite receiver, and Lamar Jackson, who is beloved by this program, Piper. He's a guy that you and I both really ride with in terms of his potential. So that was the deal. I get Julio and Lamar. He gets Baker. Your thoughts?
All right, so at first blush, this is an awful trade for the person who receives Baker Mayfield because quarterbacks all have approximately equal value because he's a rookie and rookie quarterbacks are generally inconsistent and not trustworthy because he plays for the Browns and they are also inconsistent and untrustworthy, and because you got a top 5 receiver out of it. And sort of a flyer on Jackson. So that's first blush, anybody's going to look at this and go, that's highway robbery, and Ted robbed Kyle. So that's and that was my. I mean,
that's one way to look at it.
I talked you into this, Ted. Or not talked you into it, but I affirmed your choice. You were already ready to go. You didn't need a lot of persuasion.
Dude, yeah, so let's tell the listeners about that dynamic. Piper, it's been a decade plus since I've played fantasy football. And as I've mentioned on the show before, I do hate it. It ruins basically every weekend for me. Now that NFL football is on essentially every day of the week, it ruins most days of the week and the weekend. But you're someone whose advice I lean on. So when I get these trade proposals, often I'll float you a text, and I'll lean on your seniority in the world of fantasy football. But this is one that I felt pretty good about right away. So I was driving home from coaching real football at Lane College, and I start getting these frantic texts from Kyle McClellan, all right, from a boy named Sue, and he wants to get a deal done immediately. Irregardless of the fact that I was driving, I was coaching football. He's like, call me. He made a phone call, so he placed a call to the Slippery When Alouettes facility.
I did.
It went straight to my voicemail, but I knew we had to get a deal done that evening. So I got home, we hammered out the deal, and I have to tell you, Pipe, Kyle, being a diehard Browns fan, part of my misery in fantasy football is, like, I wanted to give him the pleasure of having the guy who is going to be his real life team's quarterback of the future.
Oh, you're so generous. You're so generous to give him that opportunity.
I wanted to give.
The rest of the league is so appreciative that you did that for him.
Indeed, man, indeed. And I felt that they would be. So, Piper, I want to talk about, like, the personas of certain guys in our league.
Well, can I give the flip side of the trade real quick?
Oh yeah, do give the upside for Kyle, because he's depressed.
Any listener who's hearing this right now, like, all they're thinking is Kyle got robbed. Mm-hmm. So while that's completely and 100% true, it's less true than you think, because it's a keeper league, and it's an auction league, which means you keep the players at the value you paid for them in the auction, plus like a few dollars every year. So Julio Jones is probably like a $50 receiver, which means next year he'll be 55 or whatever. Yeah. Baker was probably like a $1 or $2 quarterback, which means next year Kyle could have a legitimate starting quarterback for like $6. Yeah. So that is the one thing about this trade that makes it that made me not veto it as the co-commissioner. I'm anti-vetoing trades because, if people want to make dumb decisions, that's fine. But this one I was... Dude, no,
here's the other piece of this you got to understand. My other quarterbacks at this point, and I know everybody who's not in a fantasy football league is saying, give me cancer now.
No, they're not, man. They love this stuff. They love this.
We also have to remember, Kyle, we do this podcast for us. Listeners are along for the ride.
Absolutely.
Well, good. There we go.
This serves us.
There we go. My other two quarterbacks were Case Keenum and Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
That's it. I didn't have anybody else.
Not a lot of options there.
Ted had like 9 quarterbacks on his roster. So I initially I tried to lowball him. I'm not going to lie. I tried to throw in Austin Safarian Jenkins or somebody nobody had ever heard
of. Dude, you went with an all 3 names trade.
I did.
You went Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Austin Safarian Jenkins. I did enjoy the elegance of all the names in the trade. However,
that's a lot of hyphens in one trade.
I think between all 3 of the players that you put in the trade, they had a combined 4 catches between them on the entire season. Well, so it was going to be a hard no on that.
That's the interesting thing, and Pipe. So it's interesting to me that you're a co-commissioner, because this is good time to air a beef, man.
Yeah.
Good. I cannot tell you how many trade requests I've got, because I had 3 offensive players in the top 10.
Yeah.
And 8, 9, and 6 maybe, and I traded number 6 away, traded Julio away. Mm-hmm. But I would get these trade requests in which people they'd want one of my running backs who's a top, plays for the Chargers.
Melvin Gordon.
There we go. They'd want Melvin Gordon and Hopkins.
Yeah.
In return for 4 guys I had never even heard of.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's called a spite offer, because everyone is pissed that you traded Baker Mayfield.
No. This was prior to this.
Dude, I feel like Pipe. So I feel like the phenomenon that Kyle is describing is one that I've noticed in our league too, and I feel like every morning I wake up to like 3 or 4 of these proposals, and they're
Just
usually
ridiculous.
from the same 2 teams.
They are.
Yeah, and I feel like these guys spend their day just like prospecting, and they're waiting for like a weak moment or a naive owner to
a moment of weakness where you give into temptation or something.
Yeah, you give into temptation. Like your covenant
like
eyes.
the trade seductress.
Your stupid trade covenant eyes isn't working. So, I'll have to check in with my stupid trade covenant eyes partner.
Stupid trade X for your watch. Yeah.
Dude, my guy, Corey is going to call me and be like, dude, I saw that you looked at Marquez Valdez-Scantling for more than a couple minutes. I'll be like, yeah, dude, it was a tough day. I was under a lot of stress. I was just kind of like self-medicating with that.
KK's been out of town.
KK's been out of town. She's been traveling for like a week and a half.
I was just curious. I didn't know who Marquez Valdez-Scantling was. I just needed to know who it was.
Dude, yeah, it was just curiosity. Exactly.
I wasn't really going to do anything with him. I just needed to see.
Dude, I was just going to look for a minute. Yeah, so these trades come in, and it's like, these guys assume that we think quantity is better. So like 4 garbage players, like if you add them all together, could add up to one like Julio Jones.
Well, and the interesting thing is, a lot of these guys, when you look at their stats or you look at their bio for the league, they've been doing this for a long time. And I think they look at our stuff and they're like, okay, number 1, meathead. So therefore, concussions.
Yeah, concussions. Between us, we've probably got like maybe 9.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, they're both Taylor grads, and they just hand degrees out like candy.
Exactly.
I would like to congratulate both of you for passing my concussion protocol by remembering the players you traded. So
exactly.
You're good to go on the podcast.
Pipe,
you passed the protocol. You're good.
You can't see our studio, but we're actually in a tent. We're in a little tent where like we're being evaluated as we do radio. So it's very private.
Well, you passed my protocol. I feel good about this. Podcaster safety is of foremost importance. So
dude,
I feel
absolutely.
good about
This
things.
is a progressive show.
And just be known, at no point was Ted ever driven forcibly into the ground.
Yeah, nobody's been driven. I'm not on top of Kyle right now, which would be
Kyle's
weird.
body weight was not.
Not really. I mean,
I'm not.
No offense, man.
I'm not that kind of Presbyterian. But,
exactly.
So, Pipe, let me just say, your protocol thing. There's some Wheaton elitism there that I resent just a little bit.
Dude, we've got several Wheaton guys in the league.
Can I make you feel? Well, that's definitely true. I feel a little bit of like Taylor underdog syndrome. You got the little brother thing going on here. I feel that a little bit.
Dude, yeah, a little chip on our shoulder, a little chip on our North Face jackets,
Yeah. Well, yes, but our Patagonia jackets are flawless.
Dude, exactly. We're talking about like ultra affluent Midwestern white people versus like slightly less affluent Midwestern white people. So, I mean, it's really very, very small degrees of distinction at this point.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, we're all ready to go hike Mount Everest in really expensive gear.
Absolutely.
But probably eating keto and doing CrossFit.
Eating keto, doing CrossFit, driving our Lexuses out to Mount Everest, yeah.
Yeah, we buy Jeeps to not off-road.
Exactly.
So let me explain these guys' persona to you in a way that will make you feel much better about yourselves and a little bit snide towards them, which I know is really the goal here.
Absolutely.
Have you ever gone on a beach vacation with your family and you see a strange person walking down the beach? Usually he's wearing like calf socks and loafers and ill-fitting cargo shorts and like a Hawaiian shirt and then a big straw hat, and he's carrying a metal detector.
Yeah, subtext, this is how I relax. Yeah.
These trade offers are the metal detector of offers. They're just wondering what exists. They don't really know this stretch of beach. They don't know what washed up in this league.
Yeah.
You're being metal detected to see if you have any value. They are the one in the calf socks and the ill-fitting cargo shorts.
Yeah.
So just picture them that way, and you'll feel better about yourself. So it's not that they think you're dumb.
Yeah.
It's that they don't know who is dumb.
Dude,
and
no,
so
exactly. I do picture them that way, and I picture them in like a Wheaton crew team hoodie. Not because they were on the crew team, but because like somebody left it in one of those lost and found boxes in the dorm, and they just snagged it on the last day.
I still own clothes that I got out of one of those boxes. So
dude, and those were incredible at Wheaton because of how high end all the students were.
Yeah,
you could.
It's funny that you brought up North Face jackets earlier, because I have a friend who got it was like a $400 North Face parka out of one of those. Because he was an RA, and so he got to look at everything that was left at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so he would stock up his wardrobe with high-end gear every spring. It was amazing.
It's like going high-end shopping at the Lost and Found at Wheaton. And yeah, these kids are like, I'm leaving campus. It's not cold now. I don't need this stupid jacket,
Daddy will get me a new one.
Daddy will get me a new one. I've worn it 4 times. It's dead to me.
It's not cold where I'm going for spring break.
Exactly.
I don't need this thing.
Exactly.
Exactly. We'll be at my beach house for the entire summer. I don't need a parka.
Dude, you know what's so great about going to Wheaton and Taylor and paying that exorbitant amount of money that you pay to do so is that it gets you, though, a lifetime worth of, mocking of those places. And, man, you can't put a price tag on that. You know what I mean?
But it's sort of like mocking family, though, because I think we both hold our respective alma maters in, high regard, and we loved our time there, and they're the butt of many, many jokes.
Absolutely.
So it's sort of it's like the best of all possible worlds.
Dude, it really is. So a little APB to all other members of our league. Kyle and I are not going to do any of these stupid trades where you offer, 4 backup running backs.
We'll do stupid trades with one another.
We'll do stupid trades, but only with one another. That's the Taylor way,
It is the Taylor way. There's a little clannishness going on.
A little clannishness, for sure. Piper, let's stay in football momentarily and just give an ever so brief Manziel Minute. So the Manziel Minute is something that our Canadian listeners have come to know and love. I have covenanted with our listenership to watch every minute of Montreal Alouettes football this season and follow the career of one John Manziel. And
he sounds like he has so much more potential when you say John Manziel than Johnny. Johnny Manziel, he should be playing for the Montreal Alouettes. John Manziel, he might be the 6th pick in next year's draft.
Dude, no, you know what John Manziel is? He's like the successful contractor in your small town. You drive by every other new build, it's John Manziel Construction, and you're driving by.
He's got his name on the benches at bus stops.
Dude, yeah, John Manziel Construction all over the place, and you're driving by going, man, I bet it's raining money on that guy. I bet he's doing really well, So the real Johnny Manziel, is doing less well in that he got the start last week for Montreal, and I'm happy to report, Piper, no turnovers, no interceptions. He actually played pretty well. He showed flashes of the old Manziel, but I have one sort of caveat to add to this, and that is, I think, and Kyle, have you watched any CFL this year? Have you watched any Montreal Alouettes football?
I have not watched the Alouettes, but I did by accident happen to, sort of like your Covenant Eyes issue. I looked a little longer than I should have at a CFL game.
Okay.
And, I felt myself getting dumber. Rather quickly, but
see, we didn't need to do that. But
are you sure that wasn't Monday Night Football and their terrible announcers making you dumber?
Oh my goodness!
Oh, dude, we should get into that for a second. But
yeah,
I think we did on the last sports episode, but we can do it again if we want.
The one thing I want to add on the Manziel Minute, I think, and I hate to bag on any football player, especially a player that's playing at a higher level than I will ever get to, but. I think the offensive line that he's playing behind in Montreal may be the worst professional offensive line I've ever seen. And I was watching with my dad, who's a former offensive line coach at Taylor, where Kyle and I played. And the linemen looked to me like a lot of small college linemen, in that they were carrying a lot of weight. It wasn't good weight. They weren't mobile. They weren't especially strong. They were just kind of big, sloppy guys. And poor Manziel didn't have time to take 1.5 breaths in the pocket before he was just overwhelmed by a pass rush. So I think, tip
Can
the
I
cap.
ask a question about why that is? I mean, maybe that's not true across all the CFL. Maybe it's just that team. But I get the impression, so in the NFL, there's always a shortage of good offensive linemen. Every team struggles with depth. A good offensive line is one injury away from being a mediocre or a bad one.
Yep.
A team like the Vikings that starts off mediocre is one injury away from being, eaten alive by Aaron Donald. So is it just that everybody who's even remotely adequate just gets signed to the NFL? Is that the issue?
I have a couple theories on this, but Kyle, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think there are the initial thing is the offensive linemen, generally speaking, are always the big uns who aren't quite good enough athletes to play defensive line. Mm-hmm. So the guys that are,
said as a former defensive lineman, of course.
No, that's. I think it's just true across the board. If you have a big kid who can move, who's violent and aggressive and got some twitch to him,
he ends up on the D line.
Yeah, now you might take one of those kids and make him a left tackle because you need one. Mm-hmm. But you're only going to take one. You're not going to take that kid and go, you know what? You'd make a great right guard because when we run counter, you're going to be
Yeah.
You're going to be money. No, you don't put that kid there.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great point, Kyle. And the other point I would make to that is that, so in Canada, they have this roster rule where you can only have so many internationals on your roster and only so many internationals on the field at the same time. So what a lot of the CFL teams will try to do is make their offensive linemen Canadian players. So those players are coming from the Canadian college system, which, again, no shade thrown up there, but I think it's just a numbers game in that they have fewer linemen being developed than we have down here. And yeah, you end up with probably a lot of small college quality linemen who are playing CFL football in front of a bunch of really elite skill players. And it's part of what makes the league interesting to me, honestly. I really enjoy watching it, but I really felt for John the other night as he was trying to get things done in the pocket with a rush right on top of him. So
the other thing that doesn't help offensive linemen, I think long term, is they can cheat.
Yeah.
Like nobody's business legally. I mean, they hold to the point where it's like, do you even have a soul?
yeah, exactly.
Because I don't think they do.
They're just resourceful,
right?
You know,
and so again, to generate any kind of pass rush, you've got to be, as we saw last night, you have to be an Ndamukong Suh or Aaron Donald kind of freak as an athlete.
Yeah.
To get anything done, because if not, the guy just latches onto you, holds on for dear life, and that's the end of it.
Dude, I'm glad you mentioned last night. I want to use that as a bridge to Piper's Minnesota stuff. But before that, I want to make one more point about O-line play based on last night. So, and really just based on what I see coaching at the small college level. So last night's game is a great illustration of how really everybody at every level is playing arena football now. I mean, with the exception of Todd Gurley getting, 12 to 15 carries last night, there was no running game to speak of, none whatsoever for Minnesota. You see quarterbacks throwing it 50 to 60 times a game. You see D linemen really getting smaller, and in the NFL, it's gradations. So, Aaron Donald at 290 is considered small. But especially at the small college level, most of your DNs are 230. Most of your D tackles are 240, 250. These are small, like one gap penetrating sort of guys, but yet your O-linemen are still these huge, fat, sloppy dudes. And I think, Piper, if I were coaching in the CFL, my O-lineman would be 260, 270 because no one's moving anybody off the ball anymore. It's not like it was when Kyle and I played in the 90s where it was a real downhill kind of, smash mouth sort of experience on the O-line and D-line. I mean, the game moves laterally. I think you're going to begin to see O-linemen getting smaller, and especially in Canada where there's a scarcity of mobile big guys. I would love to see a team go to like 270 and smaller for their O-linemen and see how their performance changes.
Isn't that how, I mean, thinking back 15, 20 years, when the Broncos won their Super Bowls with...
like Tom Nalen at center, he was like 260,
Kubiak their
270.
offensive line coach, or their... I mean, they did
Kubiak
this
was their coordinator, I think.
Okay, so yeah, they had this like aggressive zone blocking scheme, a lot of chop blocking, but none of their guys were big. They were all, big for offensive linemen. They were all small. Like Mark Schlereth was on that team, and he was like 270, 280, and all those guys were like small, fast, mobile. They could pull.
Yeah,
and they did it for the running game. But so I guess my question is, if offensive linemen are the worst athletes. Mm-hmm. And so you got a defensive end. So take Khalil Mack, who's just devouring offenses everywhere. He's like 250, 260, super fast. Yep. You put him against a 280-pound offensive tackle, that's 20 pounds he doesn't have to eat. So that's a guy he can just toss.
Yeah, I guess
isn't that the way it would go?
The logic there, though, is that you would take your Aaron Donald type athlete that you would normally put on the defensive line at 270 or 280, and you would have him playing left tackle trying to block Khalil Mack, and then you have athlete on athlete. Because Khalil Mack, as good as he is, he's by and large he's not ragdolling offensive linemen to get into the backfield. He's speed rushing them. And same with Von Miller and really the elite pass rushers in the league now are smaller guys.
And that going from 300 to 280, that guy's losing table muscle.
Yeah, that's right.
He's not, as to Ted's earlier comment, they're not carrying their weight great. Mm-hmm. So you drop off that 20 pounds and say they look less like the guy wearing shorts and flip-flops and
And more like a real athlete.
There you go.
More like a real athlete.
There you go.
So, Piper, let's talk about last night's track meet. So, Kyle McClellan and I were at a very high-end dinner party with the brass of Union University last night. So, we didn't get a huge opportunity to watch ball, but you did.
We watched the end of it. Did you watch the end of it?
I didn't watch the end. I actually caught like the extended highlights this morning, so I feel like I'm conversant in the game. So last night's game, probably the matchup of the week in the NFL. It was the Rams and the Vikings on Thursday night. It was a rare, good Thursday night game, and the game did not disappoint in that there was a lot of scoring, a lot of passing. A Rams offense that is really a Ferrari at this point. Exquisite. I think was the word that you used, Piper. Really unbelievable offense, a lot of passing. Last night's game was really, I think, a mile marker in terms of where the NFL is at, where the NFL is going in terms of pass games. And, I want to give you a minute to respond to it. But as a Minnesota fan, after the huge investment that you made in the offseason, you're now at, what's your record, 1-2-1?
1-2-1, yeah.
Where are you at emotionally with that at this point?
Well, I didn't expect the Vikings to be as good as they were last year, record-wise. I think last year they were 13-3. I expected this year to be like an 11-5 kind of season. They're playing a first-place schedule, and there's some really good teams on that schedule. Going on the road on a short week to Los Angeles to a team that was good last year and has shown themselves to be dramatically better this year.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to win last night. I thought they would have a chance, but when you sit down at the beginning of the season and look at the schedule, you're like, that's probably a loss. It's a short week, tough team. The loss to the Bills was a kick in the nuts because the Bills stink and the Vikings just they were looking at Thursday's game. They didn't even show up for that one. So I'm sort of at a place now where the thing that I'm trying to figure out is, do they have a good defense? They were supposed to have a top 4 or 5 defense in the league, and thus far they've looked like probably a bottom 10 defense in terms of the way people are just lighting me. Green Bay did. Buffalo moved on them. Granted, they were Buffalo started on the Vikings 40 as their average starting position, so there's a lot of things going on there. And then the Rams just lit them up like a Christmas tree. So I'm a little concerned about the defense, but I still feel like 11-5 is in play, or I guess it would be like 11-4-1 or something like that at this point.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think you know what you have defensively yet.
No,
because that Rams team is.
And Everson Griffin was out,
insane.
and as we've seen, you see in the league, when Khalil Mack goes to the Bears, they go from a solid defense to a potentially elite defense. Everson Griffin is not Khalil Mack, but he's probably a top 10 defensive end, and he's out with some pretty significant mental health issues. I mean, he had like a paranoia breakdown, which is pretty scary to read about. So all of a sudden, their defensive line rotation looks a lot uglier because their best defensive lineman is not there. That's a problem, especially against a team like the Rams, who you have to put pressure on them, because otherwise they do what they did last night, which is score every time they touch the ball.
Now, do you feel better offensively about where you are? Because I aside from that last possession, Cousins looked really good, and that defensive line for the Rams should be illegal.
Yeah, they're incredible.
You have
you mean on the first drive where they almost stole 2 handoffs? That defensive line,
the one that has 2 transcendent talents,
interior players, unbelievable.
Just destroy. I mean, it's insane how.
Yeah, they're fun to watch.
They're like the Bears. They're like
the '85 Bears.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, defensively, they're that good.
They are.
Yeah. So the things I feel good about on the Vikings are their new offensive coordinator, John DeFilippo, calls a really good game. I wish they would stick to the run a little bit more, just to set up play action and things like. Nobody in the league is a running team besides Jacksonville, which is why Ted has a deep, probably inappropriate love affair with Jacksonville.
Dude, I have a Jacksonville Covenant Eyes guy too, man. If I look at Doug Marrone too long, I have to have a phone call
and a cold shower.
Exactly.
Doug Marrone.
But you have to run the ball. You have to run the ball to set up play action, and the Vikings just quit, which means that it gives a team like the Rams a chance to just tee off. But DeFilippo's calls a great game. The Vikings receivers and quarterback look great. And, Thielen and Diggs are filthy.
They are. They are.
So all of that is good. Their offensive line has gotten the crap kicked out of them several times this year. Which again, last night, is that indicative of how bad they are, or is that defensive line just that good? It's probably a combination of the two. I'm much more concerned about the defense than the offense. I think the offensive line can patch things together. I think DeFilippo's only in his 4th game, or he's going into his 5th game now, so he's going to continue to figure things out. But the defense just looks bad. Again, that said, Sean McVay is a dark wizard with powerful magic when it comes to calling plays, and he just
dude, he is.
He just works stuff. He just creates things that nobody else can do, and I just had my jaw on the floor watching the way that he put a decent Vikings defense in a position to look like fools last night, over and over and over again. He's an insanely good play caller.
Dude, Pipe, remember when people thought Jared Goff sucked? This is something we discussed.
He was a bust 8 games into his career.
Oh yeah, 8 games into his career, Jared Goff is the worst. He's a bust, and now he's the driver of this exquisite Ferrari of an offense. And I think you and I have alluded to this on the program, but I think if I were redrafting my fantasy team, I would draft great coaching staffs. I would draft coordinators. I would populate my team with guys who are on these progressive Ferrari type offenses with talented coordinators, and instead of drafting stars, which is how we tend to do it.
Yeah, it would be all Chiefs, Rams, Vikings, Chargers.
Yeah,
I don't know who else. That's kind of the whole list. I guess Eagles maybe.
No, I would definitely put the Eagles on that list for sure.
I guess it's hard to judge the Eagles because Wentz just came back. But.
Dude, my concern with all this, Pipe, is that, and this is me being curmudgeonly and an old man.
This is my favorite version of Ted.
I love the running game. I love fullbacks. I love Dalvin Cook in theory. I like the idea of watching Dalvin Cook play, but if he's in an offense where Kirk Cousins is dropping back 50 times a game and he's running the ball only from time to time, it's not going to work, as Kyle said, but it turns the game into something that I don't want it to be. And, the NFL is looking to me frighteningly like the Big 12 in that, I feel like I'm watching Oklahoma State against Texas Tech when I'm watching a lot of these games.
The Big 12 has garbage defenses, which is why they look like that. The NFL has garbage rules.
Yeah, that's true.
Because when you watch players hesitate to hit other players, and that completely tilts the game towards the offense. The offense is always playing downhill.
Yeah.
Because the defense can never scare them. Yeah. They can never bruise them. They can never do anything to sort of change the tenor of the game.
Yeah.
And it's definitely becoming that way. And you see it with all the Clay Matthews hits and all these, these other plays. And I know we said we weren't going to get into it, but the defensive, the rules in favor of the offense are. That's how a game like last night happens. Yeah. I think in large part.
So to your point,
it's just that.
To your point, we're all agreed that the Rams have this phenomenal defense, and it's been a long time since we've seen a defensive line that good. And not to take anything away from the Vikings, but this transcendent defensive line gave up 31 points at home.
Yeah, I think the era of the dominant defense is over.
Yeah,
I don't think you'll see another 85 Bears. You won't see another late 80s, early 90s Giants. Teams that were they were holding you to 7 to 9 to 10 points. I mean, just these dominant. The Baltimore Ravens. You're not going to see another transcendent.
And it's even a shift from last year, where the Eagles had a really good defense and the Vikings had a really good defense, and there's a handful of other teams that were pretty exceptional, and that has all gone away. I mean, this year you don't see good defenses. You just see some trash offenses, Dallas, for example, who's still running the same offense they ran in 1992 or something like that, except without Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman.
Dude, they're just throwing darts at a board. They're just calling plays. Whereas I think what you saw last night was intentionality in terms of play calling and scheme and what good coordinators and good teams do. Piper, let's talk about Minnesota. Let's keep it here. But let's talk about another thing that has to frustrate you, and that is this conflict between Jimmy Butler, a star, an NBA star for whom the Timberwolves traded last year, and Tom Thibodeau. Now Jimmy Butler wants out of Minnesota already. What do you have to say about that?
So a little history on this.
Yeah.
When the Timberwolves signed Thibs to be coach, I was convinced it was a great move because they'd had terrible coaches, and I was like, this guy has a history of success. Every Chicago fan warned me that I was wrong. This is not a good move. He's going to grind your franchise into powder.
Yeah.
I didn't listen. And so to all the Chicago fans who are listening, I would like to say you were right and I was wrong.
Yeah.
Because Thibs has ground the franchise into powder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they traded for Jimmy Butler, and it was before Thibs had gone and turned the entire team into the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
And it was best player that they have acquired since Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
Like bar none.
Yeah.
And I was really excited because the stuff they gave up was, promising but not great.
Yeah.
One season, the Timberwolves are the number 3 seed about 3/4 of the way through the season, and then Jimmy gets hurt, and they fall to, I think they were the 8th seed, and they had to win in the last game of the season to get in. But, I mean, that's all of that adds up to that's a really good move. But throughout the entire season, you heard rumors that people weren't getting along. You could tell that they weren't happy. It wasn't like watching Houston or Golden State or Boston where these teams played together.
Yeah.
It was just some individual talents who were good enough to make some things happen.
Yeah.
And then this offseason, it just blew up, and I think it's mostly because of contracts.
Yeah.
The Wolves wouldn't offer Jimmy a max. They did pay Karl Anthony Towns the max, so 5 years, $190 million. Mm-hmm. They gave Andrew Wiggins the max, and he didn't deserve it. And my understanding apparently is that Cat said, "I'll sign the max if you promise to get rid of Butler."
Yeah.
So it was essentially a leverage play. And then Thibs is just the worst locker room coach ever. He's garbage as a locker room coach. Dude, Popovich has a reputation as being like curmudgeonly.
Yeah.
But his players play there and they play hard and they listen to him. Nobody likes Tom Thibodeau. And so he's just taking a situation that's already problematic and making it 100 times worse by being just the world's biggest. I don't know. I'm going to stop there before I get myself in trouble.
Dude, yeah, stop there.
He's an awful coach.
I want to lay an NBA theory on you. And I think I will be fascinated to see the first team to do this. I think the NBA is moving into a post-coaching environment. I just think coaching doesn't matter in the NBA. I think it's impossible to coach somebody who makes $40 million more than you do. It creates an untenable dynamic where, there are only 2 or 3 coaches in the NBA now who move the needle. And I think the rest of them are just interchangeable non-entities. Piper, do you think there will come a time where we see maybe an NBA team that's impeccably general managed and self-coached? In that they will have people who travel with them and make sure they get from point A to point B on time, but essentially they'll coach themselves.
I don't think so, because so much of coaching is awareness of flow of the game. What needs to happen to alter, because basketball is a game of runs. Very rarely do you see just trading buckets. It's usually 8 points and then 12 points for the other team and back and forth. So that's where coaching comes in, is all the adjustments to what the other team is doing. And players can't do that because they can only focus on setting the pick and rolling to the hoop and guarding their man and making a switch and whatever else. And so there is a lot of scheme to it. I think it is definitely changing to a little bit more of the kind of like you see in the corporate world, what they call a flat structure. So instead of the Red Auerbach, it's like my way or the highway kind of thing, it's the Steve Kerr thing.
One of the great cigar smokers in sports, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, classic. And he would light him up on the court when they were winning.
I love that.
But you get like the Steve Kerr model, which is he's the coach, but Kevin Durant's opinion and Steph Curry's opinion and Klay Thompson's opinion and Draymond Green's opinion all matter. And he's sort of weaving it's personality management along with the ability to make in-game adjustments. I think you see the same thing with Brad Stevens. Like, he's the opposite of heavy-handed.
Yeah.
He's like an alongside you coach, and so it's about building trust as opposed to having authority.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a really true statement, and it is, in its own way, kind of a paradigm shift.
And nobody trusts Tom Thibodeau, so that's why the Timberwolves are bad.
Yeah, Thibs, rest in peace, Thibs. It's Thibs is a holdover from an old era, I think, and I'm not sure it's going to work into the future. He's
going to get fired either during the season or just after the season. It's going to happen.
And here's one of my favorite.
It might be his last head coaching gig because he has not made a single adjustment since like 2006.
One of my favorite NBA things is how, like, you'll get a week and a half into the season and somebody gets fired. Like, their triggers are so fast on these head coaches where, like, if they start, like, 0-4, he's gone, which would never happen in football. I mean, you could just never implement somebody else's brand new program, in midstream in that way. But yeah.
That speaks to what you were talking about, sort of the end of the coach, because it is about trust. Because if you bring in a new coach who's running more or less the same system, but the players like him, you'll see him go on like an 8-2 run or something like that, because all of a sudden they're like, oh, we like playing for this guy. We're going to try harder. We're more invested.
Right.
Which, it's not at all like that in football.
There was a great video that was going around on social media, so I know Ted didn't see it.
Yeah.
But it was a clip of, it was maybe 2 or 3 minutes long. It was an in-game clip of the conversations between Steve Kerr and Steph Curry.
Interesting.
And I was stunned at how overwhelmingly positive Steve Kerr was. And Steph was having a rough night, but he's looking at stats and he's like, look, when you're in the game, this happens.
Right.
Nobody else in the game brings this.
Interesting.
Nobody else does this. So even though Steph's having an awful night, by Steph's standards, Steve Kerr was so tremendously, and I hate to say the word encouraging because it has kind of a false...
Yeah, it has kind of a soft connotation.
Yeah, because if you're an athlete, it's like, screw encouraging. I don't need encouraging. I just need to go out and...
It is nice, though.
Yeah, I need to go out and suck less.
Dude, it's nice to be treated with respect, though, as an athlete.
It is. And he does. Yeah. And so it was really intriguing to watch instead of, hey, why don't you get your head out of your you-know-what? You're having a horrible night. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Instead, you've got Steve Kerr constantly encouraging, constantly pointing out the ways that Steph changes the game just because he's in it.
Yeah, it's a good model, man.
Yeah,
it's a good model.
And Brad Stevens is much the same way.
Yeah, for those of us who coach kids, even like running a journalism program at a college, I know you can't draw a straight line between the two, but I think there's a lot of parallel between how young writers work and young athletes work, and just that model of coming alongside, encouraging. I do think it works better. Let's talk about a player, Piper, here at the end, who does not feel especially encouraged by his situation, and that ties in nicely to a recurring segment that we do on the sports program, which is a dumb Titans thing. So, as you and I have discussed ad nauseum, from a marketing standpoint, the Titans are a disaster. From a uniform standpoint, the Titans are unwatchable, and also from a just their product,
a quarterbacking standpoint, a running back standpoint, just generally all things Titans is pretty unwatchable.
Yeah, the product on the field has been deeply unwatchable. So this week, a Titans receiver named Rishard Matthews indicated that he wanted to be traded. He wanted out of Tennessee because he wasn't getting enough targets. And this is the self-same Rishard Matthews who was playing with Blaine Gabbert as his quarterback, and who was on the losing end of a 9-6 shootout with my Jacksonville Jaguars.
It was a high-scoring baseball game,
dude. Yeah, it was incredible. Just a shootout there in Jacksonville. But what do you make of this, Piper? Rishard Matthews, maybe the sort of lowest end receiver ever acting like a high end receiver and asking for a trade. This is I kind of admire the balls on this kid, to be honest.
Wasn't he their leading receiver last year? Granted, that was like 52 catches for 600 yards or something like that, but he's been a productive receiver for them, for 2 or 3 years now. But here's the thing. He signed a contract extension for $0 guaranteed dollars. So it was all kind of up to the team, and they can cut him at no cost. I mean, so I don't know why that that was his first mistake. So he asked to be traded or he wanted more targets, and they're like, you know what, we're going to cut you, and it's not going to cost us anything.
Yeah.
And, you know, he had been signed by, I think, the previous regime because they've got a new GM and new coach in recent years. And so, yeah, I just sort of chuckled at it. It's indicative of how NFL teams and players, like, the teams hold all the control. The players have none. Except for quarterbacks. Quarterbacks have some leverage. Everybody else just, I mean, look at the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell. Like, they're just like, no, we're just, you know, we made you this franchise tender, and you're not going to sign it. So you just, see ya, bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's probably the best running back in the league. And so for Rishard Matthews, I almost said Rashard Lewis. That's a former basketball player.
Exactly.
Plays in the Big Three now.
Yep.
For him to do it, it's just he's completely disposable. But he's probably going to go lead the Patriots in receiving for the rest of the season.
Dude, exactly. And in our business, the equivalent would be like, you're an author, you've only ever sold like 3,000 copies of a book, and you know, you bluster into the publisher's office making demands about what you want and need. And they would tell
and on your next book, you're like, no, I want a $50,000
Exactly, I deserve this.
You know what? You can go self-publish. That's just fine.
Exactly. Well, Piper, this has been a good episode, man. This has been a lot of fun. I've managed to get through it without saying anything disparaging about Kirk Cousins, even though we talked about the Vikings. So I feel like that's a win.
I very intentionally didn't mention his name, if you'll notice that. When we were talking about the Vikings, I said the receivers and quarterback look good. I put it together as a unit. I praised the offensive coordinator, and I didn't, you know, one more temptation Ted didn't need. You already have your Doug Marrone struggles.
Dude,
you already have your, you know, your running back struggles. I didn't need to put one more thing
Thank you so much, man. That's good friendship right there. That's what it should look like. And let's just covenant as a program to keep
You're doing the program in community together.
Yeah, we're doing it in community, side by side. Let's just keep Kirk Cousins' name out of our mouths for the rest of the season. So, as a program, we can figure out elegant ways to talk around that name, and that will serve me and serve the audience.
We can follow the LeBron James model. When he was, you know, he and Kyrie Irving were at odds. He just always called him the kid.
The kid.
So he named every other player on the team. He's like, you know, Richard Jefferson this, and Channing Frye that, and Kevin Love this, and the kid.
Yeah,
so it was like this passive aggressive disparagement. I feel like we can come up with something like that.
I think we can
for he who shall not be named at quarterback.
I think we can. Let's think that through before the next sports ep. I want to thank the great Kyle McClellan, Taylor football legend, pastoral legend in Nebraska, and father of one of my favorite students now at Union University. Thank you, Kyle, for being on the program. This was a pleasure.
Thank you for
having me in the studio.
Glad to be here. Glad to see how the magic is made.
See how the magic is made. A little peek behind.
Is it everything you hoped it would be?
Well, I brought bacon, Barnabas, when I came, so it's all it's all good. I feel like maybe we're not getting Ted's best effort because he is a little drowsy.
I'm a little drowsy from all the biscuits and gravy and bacon, but. You know, be that as it may, we did some good radio today, and Kyle actually came to the table with our sign-off name. So,
ooh, strong.
Yeah, very strong. This is a very much a journeyman baseball player. So, Piper, you and I are fans of journeyman and kind of lower tier names from the world of professional sports. So, I will sign us off. We have wandered to and fro throughout this episode of Happy Rant Sports, and until next time, Buddy bien Kalana.
The Happy Rant is brought to you by Resonate Recordings. If you go to resonaterecordings.com, you can see the full range of services they offer. So if you're considering starting a podcast, they are the ones we recommend going with. Again, go to resonaterecordings.com to see their prices, to connect with them and ask any questions, and to see what they can do to help you launch, edit, master, and improve your podcast. Again, go to resonaterecordings.com to see what they can do to help you launch and improve your podcast.